Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 UNESCO-DCMÉT Symposium, third day and the very last day. For the last 3 years, many people have shown great interest and have participated, so I thank you all. Before we have the closing ceremony, we will first listen to the keynote speech. And then after that, we will have the closing ceremony. And from 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we will have 2 very important sessions. So today, the keynote speaker that we have here is going to give a keynote speech on commons, social justice, urban transformation. I am talking about Professor Park Bae-gyun of the Department of Geography Education of Seoul National University and the Director of Center for Asian Urban Society. So please welcome him to the floor.
So it's great to see you all. As introduced, my name is Bae-gyun Park. I will now begin my presentation. So as you can see, it's titled as such. So it's now in the era of crisis. It's actually reclaiming the urban commons. And it's actually about creating and building urban commons. And that's the starting point of overcoming the era of crises. So that will be the gist of my presentation. So as we all know, globally, we are facing a whirlwind of change and crises. Climate change has been ongoing, and even up until a few months ago and for a few years ago, COVID-19 or the pandemic has created a lot of suffering. And of course, we are facing wars like the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, as well as the war in Israel against Palestine. And so with all of these incumbent crises and conflicts, we are now facing unprecedented socioeconomic and ecological crises. That's why humanity is facing a risk of various different measures. Why have these risks and crises been created? Of course, you could come up with various causes and reasons. We could also be talking about the capitalist system, and of course, the neoliberalism, a market-friendly neoliberalism that is based on private ownership and greed of the humankind. And in order to quench that greed, people have been claiming what is not theirs and exploiting what was others. And if you think about what is most common, I think that the key factor behind it is the market-friendly neoliberalism, and it has caused a deterioration of the ecological and basic public systems. And as I mentioned, it has deteriorated our public systems, and our public system is now suffering from the fundamentals, and we're now lethargic from all of the suffering. How can we overcome these crises? In order to overcome the crisis, we cannot work in silos. We cannot overcome the crisis by ourselves. We have to create a new system altogether, comprehensively. For the past 32 years, this new neoliberalism has been persisting. And of course, it had been there in the past, and that had weakened us. However, we have to build a social solidarity system that had been disrupted, but we have to rebuild it in order to build ourselves anew. So where do we start from? Once again, I believe that we have to start an urban transition. Then why is it an urban transition? And why is it the starting point of rebuilding and overcoming our crisis? The part that I want to talk about is quoting from Lefebvre, a very famous urban scientist. He has been talking about the urban revolution, that we are living in an era of urban revolution. This has been going on for the past 30 years. Oh, maybe it's talking about a revolution within the city, or we're breaking down the system within the city. You might misunderstand it as such. However, it's actually about humanity creating a transition like a revolution, and that is the so-called urban transition. We had the industrialism and then the urban transition. And once again, to reiterate, it's actually an urban revolution that is ongoing. And an urban society is incoming. And that is why we have to enact this within the city, and we have to bring about transformation and change within the city. Just to elaborate on this, the crisis that we are facing as a humanity is actually a modern system. It's because the public good of a government or centered on a government does not work anymore. So these kinds of political discourses or discussions, whether it's a state or the market, it does not work anymore. Whether we choose from A or B, this kind of a binary system does not work. And the state-centered discussions is no longer plausible. And that is why a lot of people have been fighting with each other, because they believe that this social public system was to be upheld, and they thought that it would protect them. However, now the welfare system, they believe that the rigidness of the autocracy or the financial issues or the division of territories, and with international globalism and migrants, we are not able to provide for these immigrants. So I believe that the welfare system centered on the state is no longer viable. And under these circumstances, we have a lot of inequality, economic inequality, and we are also facing an ecological crisis as well. This also links to a diverse level of despair. And under this kind of despair, it spreads onto others. And also with meritocracy, it intensifies, because you see others who actually have problems, and you believe that it's because it's their fault, because they do not have any merit or any talent, or they don't have the capabilities to stand up for themselves or work for themselves. That is why a lot of people focus on speculation and bitcoins, or they focus on trying to grab all of the investments that grab them more profits. That is not an honest living. So I believe that we have to move beyond this kind of modern public systems. And the starting point for that is the urban cities. So we need to move beyond the modern public system. And that is the unit and the scale that can actually be the starting point. That is the urban area. That's why I mentioned the urban transition and the urban revolution. And as Lefebvre has mentioned, we are moving into the urban society. However, this urban society has two paradoxical, ironic characteristics. it has the pros and cons. One con is that with the urban society, you have the inclusiveness or enclosure, and you have the territorial disputes become even more aggravated, and you have more gentrification. However, there is a pro part of it. You have the venue of more discourse and a lot of meet and greets with other people. You have energy amongst the people. And that is exacerbated among the people as well. And so what we have to do is we have to minimize the ill effects of the urban society and, of course, emphasize the benefits. Excuse me, I haven't changed the slides. So with that in mind, I believe that we have to have a right to the city. Henri Lefebvre also mentioned that that people have a right to get into the city. And the starting point of the city and those people who actually use the city is that the city is the culmination of all people's efforts and the citizens' efforts. It's actually a collective product of people living, working, and playing in that city. It's actually the artwork of people who are living in that city. And it's also a social place and a social space where people encounter with each other, where they meet, and it's an assembly of people. And this is also, as I mentioned, it's actually a result of all of the actions of the citizens. So up until now, the rights or the plans have been exploited by a handful of elitists, political elites, and those people who own the real estate. It's actually a result of the masses, the groups. However, they're not being able to have the rights to the city. So the rights to the city concept is talking about how everyone has a right to the city. So this story means that this actually is a right that people have to transform ourselves by having this right and to create ourselves within the city and also to achieve freedom within the city.
But the right to the city concept is quite abstract. Of course, UN Habitat perceives right to the city concept as a very important agenda. That is true. But still, as of now, the concept right to the city is very abstractive. So then how can we make it more plausible? I want to suggest the concept of enabling city. Enabling means to empower, means to facilitate. So it means making people be able to do things. And this is an alternative urban paradigm. And what is most emphasized here is that people, the residents, need to become active citizens and that we need to facilitate people to become active citizens. So then who are active citizens? Active citizens are people who voluntarily participate in the political process of a city. And people who co-produce goods and services for their needs. And through this process, people can be enabled. So cities shouldn't disable people to become active. The city should enable people to become active, basically. So then how can we create enabling cities? I think we can point three things out specifically. The first is community-based social empowerment. The second is partner state. So the state should act as a partner. And the third point is the most important. We should create or provide enabling infrastructure. So community-based social empowerment. I think I can explain this in a very simple way. Basically, people should no longer rely on either state or the market. So enabling city-based autonomous social activities is very important, and promoting the development of civic sphere is also very important so that many people can participate in that sphere. And we should create more opportunities for people. This also looks very abstract, I agree. And next, what is important is the role of the state. Originally, the state usually acted as the regulator. However, the state should not intervene anymore and act as the regulator in this enabling city. Rather, the state should become a partner, an arbiter, especially because we live in a capitalistic society. Maybe the state could act as a regulator at times, but it should also act as an arbiter and support the active citizens. In other words, these three cruxes should act as the points of a triangle, and one should be connected with one another by the state. The state shouldn't act like a know-it-all and act like it has the only rationality, or shouldn't leave everything up to the market as well. And then this is the most important point that I want to emphasize. That is enabling infrastructure, creating enabling infrastructure. This is the crux of creating an enabling city. So what is this? Basically, the infrastructures of cities should be based on commons. And the commons-based creation of infrastructure should be what people use to reconfigure their lives autonomously. So we can look at enabling infrastructure from three dimensions. The first is infrastructure as urban commons. The second is infrastructure of urban commons. And the third is infrastructure for urban commons. So let me go over these concepts very briefly. First is infrastructure as urban commons. This means that we should look at infrastructure with the perspective of focusing on its normative values. We should look at infrastructure as urban commons and classify it as urban commons. And in that process, we can go through the important process of making infrastructure enabling infrastructure. So to give you one example, here you see in the photo on the screen, ongoing protests last year and this year of Korea, which is the disabled fighting for their right to access in subways. So the opposite term of enabling is disabling, right? Disabled people, as we know it, are those with disabilities. And there's a lot of conflicts here. In an infrastructure, modern infrastructure, so the subway line, the disabled are fighting for their rights of access during commuting hours. So what is this process? What does this process require? What does it need? The modern infrastructure wasn't an enabling infrastructure, basically. It was a disabling infrastructure, focused only on speed and efficiency, which made all of these disabled people isolated and secluded. So with the protests and fights of the disabled people, the disabling infrastructure becomes the enabling infrastructure. So the cooperation and agreement of the non-disabled people is what is needed. And this subway line, all in all, will become an urban commons. So this process is a very important starting point in creating enabling infrastructure. And second is infrastructure of urban commons. So the principles and mechanisms should based on which enabling infrastructure works is what I'm talking about. So what is important here is when using resources for our lives and managing resources for our lives, we need to collectively co-create the entire process. So that is how urban commons works. And that should go the same with enabling infrastructure. So resources should be urban commons. And the subjectivity of urban commons should be created through this whole process. So this is the second important point. And third, but not least, infrastructure for urban commons. So expanding urban commons, basically. So this would be the means to the end. Expanding, creating infrastructure for urban commons. For instance, there could be a lot of decentralized digital platforms, right, that have been released recently, which can be used to serve the purpose of infrastructure for urban commons. We could also utilize polycentric systems. And through this utilization, we can expand urban commons, and these systems can be used as enabling infrastructure. So this is my conclusion. Basically, people are facing an unprecedented crisis, and to overcome this crisis, we need to think of new societal values, and we need to stand in solidarity. The starting point of this would be urban transition, especially utilizing enabling infrastructure. Based on enabling infrastructure, we'll be able to create enabling cities, and that will become an important transitioning point. And ultimately, cities themselves should become commons, and cities themselves should be able to create meta infrastructure with other cities. And through such effort, we will be able to create a new public system of solidarity and cooperation. And once we create these infrastructures, we will be able to get over the despair that we are overcome by currently. And we will be able to transition that to hope. And as this hope expands, we will see the recovery of publicness and public value. So in regards to this, because we're talking about global citizenship and education today, I would like to talk a little about the implications for education. I think what's important here is I talked about creating enabling infrastructure and enabling cities, right? I think what's most important here is to read the signs of hope that nobody can read. So basically the physical aspects and the intuitiveness of finding hope is very important, because these signs of hope cannot be found easily. And transitioning this into concepts for solidarity and cooperation is very important. So we need to find the talent that can do this. So for this, I believe that we need biopolitical alternative education. And with this, we can create world citizens for peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much by delivering us a message of hope. Thank you very much, Mr. Park. Now, the 2023 UNESCO-DCMÉT symposium's theme is peace, culture, and social justice. As Mr. Park has delivered some of the examples urban area as a joint artwork, or peace as a joint artwork, or culture as a joint artwork. All of that, I think, gives us hope for the future. And I believe that this symposium is a way and a venue for us to reflect back on our actions and activities. Naturally, I believe that it comes back down to a reflection of the past 3 days. So it is now being held here in Seoul and in Montreal, and of course in UNESCO and the Université of Québec. So first of all, I would like to draw your attention to a video to Miss Lydia Upprecht. Please turn your attention to the screen.
Thank you all for joining us once more as we close this international symposium on the themes of peace, culture, and social justice. Over the last 3 days, we've had the opportunity to listen to numerous panelists from all over the world and engage in dialogue on topics that respond to critical global challenges, including threats to peace and human rights, rising hate speech, discrimination, and democratic backsliding. All of us here are tied together by our similar ideals that democracy, transformative education, and social justice are some of the pillars with which we can build a world that is inclusive, peaceful, and just. However, achieving this requires an understanding that the interconnected and multidisciplinary challenges that we faced do not have just one solution or one path to addressing them. In this vein, the symposium explored various concepts that lie at the intersection of achieving peace, such as decolonization, media literacy, respect for cultural diversity, global citizenship, and intercultural education, to name only a few. As such, the symposium provided insight on what we as educators, researchers, activists, and policymakers can do to handle current challenges and work towards a better future. Now, here at UNESCO, we believe that education is fundamental in addressing current global issues. But for education to be effective in today's day and age, we need a reimagined system. As stated in the UN Secretary General's vision statement at the Transforming Education Summit in 2022, we must ensure that learning empowers individuals and societies to both reshape the present and lead us to a more just, sustainable, resilient, and peaceful future. Now, in line with this ideal, I would like to draw your attention once more to UNESCO's key instrument on education for international understanding, cooperation, and peace, and education relating to human rights and fundamental freedoms, or the 1974 recommendation. As mentioned in the opening, this document recently underwent a revision to redefine education's role in responding to today's challenges, and also to establish what principles and actions are needed to have an education system that fosters individuals who are active citizens, prepared to face challenges with solutions. Now, before I finish, I would like to give my sincerest thanks to the UNESCO Chair on Democracy, Global Citizenship, and Transformative Education for organizing this very successful conference, and all of you for participating, and all the associated teams. These spaces are integral in bringing together relevant stakeholders to continue the conversation, knowledge sharing, and learning on what we as a collective can do to work towards a more peaceful world. I hope you all walk away from this symposium with the same perception that we have, inspired by the discussions and ready to continue our important work with fresh ideas and better understandings for how to best move forward in our respective fields. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. So 2 thoughts came to my mind, and the first is on the first day, Professor Gina Teze talked about decolonization of peace, right? Decolonizing peace, basically. We're not just talking about Africa or South America, areas where political colonialization is still existent. We have to move away from the modern colonialism. That's what she stressed. And also yesterday, we heard from Mr. CARR, Professor CARR. He talked about the purpose of education, right? And that we need to throw that question out there. And that we need to start new imaginations for democracy. That's what came to my mind as I heard that closing remark. So the second speaker for the closing remark will be Muriel Labruji, the co-organizer.
So we'll also have a video remarks from her.
Chers participantes et participants, mesdames, messieurs, je suis fermement convaincue que le symposium 2023 axé sur le thème paix, culture et justice sociale a surpassé vos attentes de bien des façons. Bien plus qu'un événement, il a été un appel à l'action, une invitation à renforcer nos efforts collectifs en vue de construire un monde où la paix, la culture et la justice sociale ne sont pas des aspirations lointaines, mais des réalités palpables. Au terme de ces 3 journées de dialogue et de réflexion, la persistance de la fragilité de la paix dans le monde contemporain ne peut être ignorée. Les défis qui se dressent devant nous sont nombreux et complexes, mais il est de notre responsabilité de les relever. Durant ces jours, vous avez exploré les liens serrés entre démocratie, citoyenneté mondiale et éducation transformatoire, cherchant des réponses aux enjeux majeurs de notre époque. Vos interventions ont transcendé les frontières, les barrières linguistiques et les différences culturelles. Un pas en avant vers un monde plus équilibré et plus pacifique. Vous avez également plongé dans l'essence véritable de la démocratie, dont l'étymologie grecque, démo, peuple, et kratos, pouvoir, évoque son fondement dans le pouvoir du peuple, afin de construire un monde plus pacifique et équitable. La discussion a été étendue. Cette notion bien au-delà du simple acte de voter, incluant l'engagement actif, l'apprentissage continu et le dialogue social et la participation de tous. Les médias sociaux ont émergé comme des alliés essentiels dans cette vision élargie. De même, vous avez exploré l'éducation comme un moyen de libérer les individus, car une éducation qui ignore les problèmes sociaux est une éducation incomplète. Vous avez également examiné la paix sous toutes ses facettes, du global au local, en abordant les diverses formes de violence, y compris la violence envers les femmes, le harcèlement, la violence des gangs et les conflits culturels. Cela a illustré comment la démocratie, la citoyenneté mondiale et l'éducation transformatoire jouent un rôle important, un rôle déterminant pour atteindre la paix et la justice sociale. En conclusion, j'aimerais m'acquitter d'une tâche très importante, soit celle de remercier tous ceux et celles qui ont contribué à la réussite du symposium. Tout d'abord, un grand merci au professeur Paul CARR, Julie Bergeron de l'UQO et à la professeure Gina TC de l'UQAM, co-titulaire de la chaire, ainsi qu'à leurs collègues de l'Université Kyung en Corée du Sud. Merci également à l'ensemble des organisateurs, organisatrices, présentateurs et présentatrices, intervenantes et intervenants pour leurs efforts déployés pour partager leurs connaissances et leur expérience avec nous. Vous avez contribué à forger une vision plus prometteuse pour l'avenir, où la paix n'est pas seulement une aspiration, mais une nécessité. Laissez-moi terminer en vous disant que je considère que nous sommes à un moment charnière de l'histoire de l'humanité où la paix est fragile, mais l'espoir demeure fort. À travers vos échanges et dialogues, vous avez tracé le chemin menant à un monde où la paix, la culture et la justice sociale ne sont pas que des simples aspirations. Merci.
네,
Thank you very much. What stood out to me in her closing remark is that this isn't just an event. It is an event to foster common actions of all of us. And in the first day and in the second day and in today's keynote speech, I think we have all seen the message that peace, culture, and social justice isn't just limited to the existing political system. So we need to advance our democracy, and more citizens need to participate. I think that's the key message that we got from her speech. And now we will hear live here in person from somebody who has shown tremendous effort for this event and who had a lot of concerns. I'm talking about Professor Jeong Bokcheol, the Dean of Seoul Campus of Humanitas College of Kyung University. I'm sorry, Kim Yoon-chul.
Good morning. I am Kim Yoon-chul of the Humanitas College of Kyung University. So as the head of one of the hosts, it is my honor to be able to deliver one of the closing remarks during our closing ceremony. So we had conducted this symposium for the past 3 days, but in fact, our preparation period was over a year. So as one of the co-hosts of the Korean counterparts, I would like to thank Dr. Seung-won Lee for his efforts. In addition, I would also like to appreciate the efforts of Professor Paul CARR and Professor Jeong for their suggestions and proposals of hosting this in Seoul. So for the past 3 days, I was surprised and shocked. And we had been located in other parts of the world, in the opposite sides of the world. We had never conversed with each other. And even during the symposium, we still had the same kind of common ground on the problem areas. And as a political scientist, I believed there were certain areas that I felt I was lonely. However, I felt that I had found comrades in my lonely fight. So despair never finds a way to recede. And this is something that a famous poet said in Korea. And I believe that we can find a way out of this because we can find a way for hope. We can still communicate with each other and cooperate with each other after the start of this symposium. I would like to thank our Dean of Kyung University, and of course our provost, Professor Kwon Oh-byung, for their financial and administrative support. And of course, one of our presenters yesterday, Yeojin Chun, I think that she was very popular yesterday after her presentation. So thank you very much for your input and contributions. here we have a lot of contributing professors, and thank you very much for being here with us. And also from our co-hosts and the KDF and our Center for Democratic Citizenship Education. Thank you very much for all of your hard work and support. Last but not least, from the Korea Lifelong Education Center and all the staff, thank you for putting this great symposium together. So, and of course, Miranda and Patrick, all the way in Canada. Thank you for cooperating with the Korean Lifelong Education Center to put this symposium together. I wish you health and peace. Thank you very much.
And next we have the very last speaker remaining. I am talking about Professor Paul CARR and Professor Gina Tesse. They actually live together. So before their remarks, I want to introduce one person. I don't know the full name of that person, but he came all the way from France using his own money to participate here. So let's please welcome him with a big round of applause, Mr. Olgar. Okay, now let me invite Mr. Paul CARR and Miss Gina. So the two of you, please step forward. Please give them a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. We like to do things together, so I hope that's okay. We started a couple of days ago, and as is the custom and tradition, and we think it's very important in Canada and elsewhere around the world to affirm and acknowledge in the Americas and elsewhere around the world that we are standing on unceded territory and land, and the historical facts of the relationships with First Nations, Indigenous peoples, and everything that has transpired since. We hope that these aren't empty words. We hope that our symposium in some way has helped cultivate meaningful dialogues. And we have had some Aboriginal Indigenous colleagues with us throughout the symposium. And I do want to recognize that my own university, Université du Québec en Outaouais, is standing on the unceded Algonquin Nation territory of Anishinaabe. And we would like to play a video of a friend of ours, Four Nations, if that's possible, for just it's a 2-minute video.
The earth is suffering. Climate change, pollution, and pandemics are some of the consequences of human-created assault on our world. According to the United Nations Biodiversity Report, 1 million more species face imminent extinction, including us. We must live on Earth differently, if not for ourselves, for future generations. 80% of global biodiversity now exists on only 20% of the Earth. It is no coincidence that this small amount of land is mostly managed by indigenous cultures. According to 450 multidisciplinary scientists, extinction rates have been less severe or avoided entirely in these areas held by indigenous people. We can all learn to live with greater respect for our non-human life forms. This is possible if we embrace the worldview that has guided us throughout our existence on this planet. In contrast to the dominant worldview, the indigenous one truly emphasizes our relationship to the land, the environment, and all its interconnected inhabitants. Without remembering this oneness with all of life, we are doomed. Regional and global scenarios currently lack explicit considerations of the indigenous worldview. It is also important that we do our best to protect and support the remaining indigenous cultures. They are fighting against all odds to protect the last of Earth's biodiversity. And while doing this, we can all re-embrace the worldview indigenous peoples share. we can come to understand that human relationship with nature is a continuous two-way dialogue, that natural resources are better thought of as relatives and teachers. Gratitude is essential. The universe is constantly in flux. Time is circular. Respect for diversity, equality, and justice is crucial. Spirit is in all things, and that human knowledge must be joined by a fearless trust in the unknowable mysteries of nature. Let us remember who we really are and reestablish our intended way of being with respect, generosity, gratitude, and of course, the happiness that comes from this. Mitakuye Oyasi, we are all related.
Thank you for that. That is a short clip on the indigenous perspective of the environment. And I think we need to engage and understand and work with indigenous peoples. There's a short PowerPoint. Can you put that? I just want to say a couple words about the symposium. Gina will then talk, and then we'll end. First of all, it's been a tremendous experience, a wonderful experience, a humane experience. And we thank our colleagues at Kyung University, in particular, Cheol and Songwon, and also the Korea Democracy Foundation. What we're trying to do is produce, and with people everywhere, if we can, in solidarity, across language, culture, and political and other potential barriers that aren't really barriers because we're human beings. But we're not on top or leading. It's not a hierarchical project. The flyer for the project explains that we're trying to develop in solidarity various themes, and we're working with social media on platforms, and we're working in different languages, and we have collaborations with colleagues in Chile who provided simultaneous interpretation, this time in Seoul, and other sponsors or groups, research centers and others that support this project. So we're extremely delighted to have been able to develop this project with you. You might ask, and I don't think we have the answer, but who's participating? And we don't know. We're using social media, and with social media, we are not an enterprise. We're not a tech company. We don't have a lot of resources. But what we're doing is trying to develop networks with people. So there's 150 presenters from 35 countries. Each one of those presenters has networks. We also have other networks and people in different languages. And what happens is that over the last 2 days, and today will be the third day from the Montreal site, there will be another 10 or 15 sessions. And those sessions go out through Zoom, through registration, but also Facebook, and we'll put them on YouTube. And I just want to show you, there's some people who come by this naturally, they're interested, others. These are the countries where people have registered via Zoom to participate in sessions. We don't know about Facebook yet, but there are other people through Facebook with algorithms that they hear about this. Last night we were up late. Do you know what jet lag is? Please, you know what it is. We have jet lag. We don't even know what time it is, but we were up at 5 a.m. because we had another session, and it was a tremendous session. So we're sleeping and not sleeping. But it was a 1-hour session on anti-racism. And immediately after the session, I looked online on Facebook, and there was 77 views, meaning that on Facebook. So outside of the people who were watching it, in other words, we're just hoping to disseminate, and we'll put everything on YouTube, and in the next few weeks, we'll continue. We're trying to do this open access, which is very important, and we agree entirely with Professor Park's analysis that we have to develop a common view of humanity. So I'll turn it over to Gina, and then at the very end, I'd like to say some thank you words as well.
Annyeong, haseyo. I started my conference on Wednesday with the quote of the Innu poet, Natasha Canapé-Fontaine, saying, "Do not enter my soul in your shoes." During those days of dialogue within the symposium, we had many testimonies, and the last one is from Professor Park. We had many testimonies that, unfortunately, some people do enter the soul of the others in their shoes, and worst, in their war boots. For millions of human beings on this planet, life is a dystopia. Despite the goodwill of so many, we live in a dystopian world. And listening to Professor Park, I have this idea that the dystopia started 531 years ago in 1492 with the invasion of Abiyala, starting the colonial modernity, which led us to this dystopia today. The French geneticist Albert Jacquard said, "We do not see the world with our eyes. We do see the world with our concepts." It means that concepts do matter. Concepts are tools of the mind used in action and for action. It means that also that thinking differently is already being in action, especially if you start to think in a decolonial way. Transformative education is required. Many of us have said that. Transformative education is about transformation, of course, and also about transition. And inspired by the Afrofeminist bell hooks, I will add that transformative education is about transgression in order to go beyond the boundaries that keep education locked in the neoliberal and colonial enterprise. So from the paradigm of coloniality to the paradigm of decoloniality, and I'm sure that Professor Park agrees with that, we need a kind of transgression also, not only transition, I mean. How to do that transformative education for the future of the world? South Korean youth and youth all over the world have a lot to say. We should listen to them. Young women and young men, after all, they are the future of the world. They are the future of this planet. Concerning South Korean women, I would like to underline the presentation made by Kyung University students yesterday, and especially about the nexus of meritocracy and gender. As you see, the hegemony of patriarchy is already being shaped by these South Korean women students. And thank you for that, Jeong. I thank you for the inspiring presentation you made yesterday with your colleagues. Many of the participants talked about the difficulty and even the trouble to address the issues and challenges of peace, democracy, global citizenship, transformative education in the South Korean society. Paulo Freire insists that there is no education without utopia. Education is just that, walking together toward this utopia, the promise of a lifelong education. This is another signification, there is another signification of utopia. Utopia is not a non-place. Utopia, we can see utopia as a better place to be and to live together, as say the Buen Vivir. Martin Luther King's discourse, "I Have a Dream," is 60 years old this year. According to his engagement, we know that his dream is dream for action. It is a woke dream for engagement and action. So, Paul and me also, we have a dream for you, dear South Korean eco-global citizens who welcome the third symposium of the UNESCO chair, DCMET. We have the dream that you will continue to share your culture with the world. We have the dream that you will continue to cherish democracy as the Korea Democracy Foundation. Continue to cherish global citizenship as APSEU. To continue to cherish transformative education as Kyung University. We have the dream that you will continue to cultivate peace by giving the plant of peace what every living being needs. Earth to nourish its roots, water to irrigate its tree branch, air to make it breathe, fire to energize peace. Do not forget the fifth element, the radical love for our common humanity, our common vulnerabilities as human, and working toward our common destiny. And the last, but not the least, I would like to recall the Bantu philosophy, Ubuntu, who says, I am because you are, I am because we are, I am because we are stronger together. In peace. Be in peace. Love to you all.
Thank you so much, Gina. Can we return to, thank you so much. And we want to end, we had two wonderful groups, but we're really one group together. So please, this is some of the group in South Korea, in Seoul. And we have our dear friend Utak and Yumuk and also everyone on the team. I won't mention everyone's name because I'll miss people, but there was a lot of stuff going on. There was simultaneous interpretation, there was logistics, there was technical support, and there was the programming. And I want to show you, this is the team in Montreal, and Patrick is the third from the right, and Miranda is the kind of on the top. And these are all research assistants, colleagues, friends, and they put together all of these sessions online with you. And I just want to say a few words at the very end in relation to the theme of our symposium, Peace, Culture, and Social Justice. And we no longer have an option other than peace. If not, we become a perilous death cult that will eventually destroy humanity. And I agree with 4 Arrows on that. Everything is being eroded. The soil, the culture, the environment, humanity. But we are in control of our actions. We do have agency. We can learn and unlearn. We are capable of loving more than hating. And nowhere is it written that we need to have war, greed, social injustice, and harm to others. This is completely the antithesis of humanity. What baby leaves the womb to hurt others, to be racist, to discriminate, to marginalize? We learn these behaviors, and we can unlearn them. Reimagining and rebuilding a democracy for humanity is central, but so is engagement, respect, and solidarity with others. Thus, some form of global citizenship or some other nomenclature. The answer or answers or solutions or ideals are before us. And we sincerely hope that our symposium has lifted us up a little to confront some of these challenges. Merci, muchas gracias, 감사합니다, and peace.
예, 감사합니다. 다시 한번 뜨거운 박수를.
Thank you very much. Please give them another big round of applause. Hope was what was mentioned at the very end of the keynote speech today. I remember a line from a movie. It's very easy to conquer somebody who is hopeless. That is a line I remember from a movie. And right now we're talking about peace, culture, and social justice. And what is most important to achieve this is hope, or positive attitude that we can achieve peace, culture, and social justice. So let us end. And before we end, I'd just like to remind you that after the closing event, it's not as if all sessions are over. We have 2 more sessions remaining in the afternoon. We will talk about some case studies from Seoul and Jeju. So please stay with us until the end. And from 5:30 in the afternoon in Food Story, a nearby store, we will have a networking party. So please participate in the party as well. So we will end the closing ceremony, and please give them another big round of applause. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we can take a group photo now, all together. So please come up to the front. Should we take it here or elsewhere?